Hey creatives, welcome and welcome back to my channel. My name is Sharice B and this is Sharice in Motion. And if you do not know who I be and you're new to this channel, I am an author and indie filmmaker just trying to make a dollar. And in this space, I just share my creative journey as an author and indie filmmaker. And I have film and television analysis here and there as well. And if that sounds like your thing, then make sure you subscribe to the channel so you can become part of the Creative Hive. So I'm trying something new with my film and TV analysis. And just because there's so many films and TV shows I've been watching or need to watch, and I really want to get my thoughts out in like a timely manner, I decided to start doing them as just video essays just to make editing go by faster so I can crank these out a little bit faster for you all. With that being said, I hope you enjoy this video. And if you do, please give me a thumbs up. Let's get started. So today's episode is all about the characters of Is God Is. Honestly, this is a character-driven story, and the characters really make the film and they drive the action, which is what we want. And they all represent something as well. A lot of them represent the themes that I talked about in my first analysis of this film. If you want to go check that out, if you have not yet, go ahead, girl. I will link it right here in this video. So I thought it was interesting how all of the characters were, in my interpretation, the victims of the monster in Is God Is. That is very realistic and true to abusive homes. Is God Is really operates like folklore and theater rather than strict realism. And that's what I really enjoyed about this film and how it is a spaghetti western at heart. But the characters embody so much emotional and thematic forces that I just had to break down the ones that stood out to me the most. Basically the whole cast. Racine and Anaya, played by Kara Young and Mallori Johnson, they did a phenomenal job just as themselves and then together as twins. I really loved the scenes where they communicate just by looking at each other and then you see their thoughts on screen. I thought that was really wonderfully done, and it was very creative as well. It was something new and unique and I loved it. I guess we can call them the good versus evil twin, although Racine, I saw good in her. I wouldn't necessarily call her evil, but for the sake of comparison, we'll go with that. So the different extremes of trauma victims in this dynamic is angry versus passive. I already discussed in part 1 about Racine's rage, and Anaya is more passive. She's very naive, I will say. There were some times in the film where I was very agitated with Anaya because her niceness was just too much in the moment where it didn't need to be that present. The scene, for example, where she confronts her father, the monster, there's a moment where she really believes that he's gonna do right and that he's a good guy and he's just gentleman, the side that their mother told them about, versus Racine, who's very angry and she holds on to a lot. And she constantly reminds Anaya about all of the bad that has happened to them and all of the bad that everyone has coming to them on this quest to find their father. So that dynamic was very evident in both of these characters and how each of them carries their trauma within their identity. I also picked up how Anaya warned Racine that she wouldn't help her if she acted out again before they reached their last stop. And in a way, she kept that promise in the last scene when the monster pulled her into the flames with him at the end when they set him on fire. Anaya couldn't live life and relieve herself of her trauma and move forward with Racine by her side. It kind of was a foreshadowing within the cinematography in the scene where Racine and Anaya, they're pulled over and they're taking a break and Racine is talking to Anaya about the quest and what they have to do. And she's kind of looks like just like, the little devil on her sister's shoulder because she's in the back and Anaya's in the front. And that framing is very intentional. I could see that Anaya was deciding for herself that Racine may be more harm to her future than good. In that moment, it seemed like she realized this, but she still kept going with what the plan was until it was really time to let her sister go. So I thought that was a powerful foreshadowing, my interpretation of it at least. So moving on to their mother, Ruby, also known as God. Shout out to Vivica A. Fox. She did her thing with this character. I really enjoyed her being Ruby in this. Ruby to me represents divine judgment, just the telling of the story of the monster, because that's why they call her God, because she's retelling the story and she requires vengeance from her daughters. And the title of the film is God Is. So there's a lot of biblical aspects within this film. Make your daddy dead. That's the same as vengeance is mine, said the Lord. And then she uses manipulation through her pain because she's burned from head to toe. She kind of uses that to manipulate the kids. She alludes to the fact of him doing things to them as a family. And then the moment where she revealed her smoking body by pulling the covers away as her last attempt to convince the twins to kill their father was the nail in the coffin, basically, to find a daddy and make him dead. And she also represents motherhood distorted by trauma. I noticed that Anaya mentioned to Racine, like, why does she want to see us now? She's been gone all these years. Like, she hasn't been a mother to them after the tragic incident with their father when they were 3 years old. Ruby is unable to mother her children physically, but also emotionally as well, because she's so burned up. It's like, how can you be a mother to anybody when you can barely move your body? So her casting herself away from her children and them ending up in foster care is super sad, because a man was the reason that a mother could no longer be there for her children. And some people may disagree and say that, it's no excuse. Ruby still should have never gave up on her kids. But, I'm not sure how certain states work, but I know when things like this happen, sometimes you're not deemed able to care for your children. So the court kind of takes your kids. I think that's a real thing. And I like how this character is framed almost prophetically, and her daughters carry out her unfinished rage. She is God, like I said. That's what even Racine and Anaya call their mother throughout the film. And they carry out her unfinished rage because she needs to get her lig back, basically. So she functions as a commanding deity in a sense. We only see her once, which is like a thing with religion where it's only certain circumstances or one special person sees the deity that everyone worships in a way. This character was so impactful that her words lingered throughout the film, and we only saw her once and she never returned on screen. So Racine repeats to Anaya also during times of doubt what God's commandments are for them. And that was also another biblical reference right there too. Also, just the title is God Is connects directly to Ruby, because it's like God is Ruby, is God Ruby. So I thought just the title alone is very creative as well and very intentional. So Ruby is neither a good mother nor a bad mother. She's just a real one with complexities and trauma that unfortunately affected her and her children. Moving on to the monster, played fantastically by Sterling K. Brown. Like, oh my goodness. I fully enjoyed seeing Sterling K. Brown as the monster. I thought it was nice for him to exercise his range as an actor as well, just because we're so used to seeing Sterling K. Brown as a good guy, especially the good husband. What he represents, of course, is generational violence. I do like how the film didn't go into his backstory at all, like why he became violent, or seeing him maybe as a kid get beat up by his father, or seeing his mother get beat up by his father. I like that they just kept it at, this man is violent, but he passed on his violence to his daughters, which could either have started or been a continuation within his bloodline of violence. But it was really evident in Racine that even Ruby pointed it out in the scene where Ruby talked with Racine and Anaya about what happened. She did mention that Racine had eyes like her father, and even could tell that she was like the angry one out of the two, which is why when it came to the violence of the situation and just the desire for vengeance, she talked a little bit more to Racine versus Anaya. And the monster also represents patriarchal destruction within the family unit. Just abusive masculinity as well. He ruined a family, and then he bounced from his family to a woman, to another woman, and created another family with this woman. He has two families, one that he destroyed completely and one that he was probably on his way to destroy. He's intentionally called the monster, and I love how that's just his name. Like, he doesn't have a name. Like, they don't humanize this villain in any way. I really enjoyed the cinematography of revealing this character. His appearance is revealed in pieces throughout the film, and we finally see him in that final scene when Anaya is trying to sneak out from the dining room table and he knows she's under there. And aside from just his mouth, we saw his shoes, like his boots when he walked. We saw his back, we saw his hands. And then by the time we see him, he looks like this good guy, like this button-up type of man. He looks very clean-shaven. He looks very neat. He even has great posture. So they really did a great job of showing us that this is what a true abuser looks like. They look like this put together, really good guy, so that he can trick everyone, because behind closed doors, he's this monster. I really liked how they shaped this character, and his abuse shapes his every decision in the film. Like, he does everything with intention to harm someone in order to move him further into whatever his goal is, which is just to be controlling and to have a power over everyone. And that's why I believe all the characters in this film are the victims in some way of the monster. So the monster doesn't just harm the family physically, but he just reshapes their identities. They did a wonderful job of not humanizing this person, but definitely making him realistic. Okay, let's move on to Divine. Divine the healer. So I really liked what they did with Divine. I did not like this character whatsoever. She is a lot of people I've seen in my life before, I've had in my life. She definitely represents religious psychosis and idolatry and exploitation, and just a blind faith as well, because she is a cult leader at the end of the day. You ain't shit, down! But as far as exploitation and using just religion, I personally believe the scene after Racine and Anaya come to her service, and she's in this lazy boy chair, and she's eating ribs in her white dress, and she doesn't offer the girls any food whatsoever. And it's just wow, you call yourself a Christian and you don't feed these random strangers who come off the street, to your sanctuary. And it just shows that she idolizes more herself as a leader, and just a leader of these people who are very brainwashed. And that's a nice scene to have, I think, without any dialogue either. It was just a few seconds of her just smashing on those ribs and not offering the girls any. So she is definitely a pick-me woman. She believes that she's the exception when it comes to harmful men. There are many women like that who they see the harm or they hear about the harm that a lot of abusive men have done to other women, and they typically blame the woman in domestic violence situations. Just for example, she was with the monster every day during his trial. So that's something that you can attribute to things you see in real life. We've seen that with certain cases of celebrity men who are in the limelight and they have these domestic violence cases, and there are women by their side during their trials. So just that little fact right there that they put in the film within the dialogue is something that is art imitating life. She also represents just church communities that protect predators and these pedos and just these violent men. And they show themselves as they're just these perfect church communities. You think they're a safe space, but unfortunately there are times where they prove themselves to not be that, which is also very painful for those who are members of their communities. And might I add that Divine, although she didn't see herself as a victim of the monster compared to Ruby and Racine and Anaya, she still was indeed a victim of this man's horrific doings and undoings. Because he didn't physically put his hands on her, she most likely thought that there was something special about her, which is why he came to her. And the way she even retold the story of how she met Racine and Anaya's father. She presented the story in a very savior-like way. She said that he was broken and she nursed him back to health with her bosom and prayer. And although she thinks that, in reality, he was just using her for her money, her home, her food, and of course her support in the courtroom during his trial. Then he also used her body as well during that time, because we come to understand in the film that Divine bared a child with the monster, Ezekiel, and we'll get to that character later. But she birthed a son and he never even met his father because the monster hightailed it after his trial when he got off, and he abandoned Divine. But she refuses to believe that she is indeed a victim herself as well. And unfortunately, there are victims like that where they don't see themselves as a victim, especially if they weren't physically abused, but if they were verbally abused or just exploited for their resources and or used for their money. It's a very slippery slope, and Divine falls under that type of victim that doesn't even know she's a victim. So with these characters, Ezekiel, the lawyer, Chuck Hall, and Scotch and Soda Riley, I want to talk about these four just as the monster's male victims, starting with the legacy of the monster and his toxic masculinity. His sons are born into that, and they're born into a violent household. So Scotch and Riley are very different men, just like how Racine and Anaya are very different women. I would say that Scotch is the covert toxic masculinity and Riley is the overt one, but the more violent side of it, as y'all saw in that scene when he was trying to choke out Anaya. He went from 0 to 100 real quick, and that is realistic. So with Scotch, though, he immediately sexualized Racine and Anaya when they came to the house, as the monster did to Divine when he was on the run. So that's how Scotch is portrayed in the film. So he inherited his father's hatred of women. And because I'm sure he saw his mother, Angie, we'll talk about her later. I'm sure he saw his mother, Angie, get hit as well. He's a victim of domestic violence, but unfortunately he turned out like his father, although he was a victim. So moving on to Ezekiel. Ezekiel was an interesting character. Ezekiel is the son of Divine, the healer, and the monster. He never met his father, but yet he put him on this pedestal and basically gave him a godlike complex. He idolized his father as Racine idolized her mother. They both were the same in that regard. So because his mother basically brainwashed him since he was a child, I'm assuming, Ezekiel was very overprotective of his hero's reputation, because he saw him as his creator, like his God. When he went to go try to stop Racine and Anaya from getting further in their journey, I remember those last moments when the twins got away, and I forgot exactly what he said, but he spoke very violent, venomous words about them. I thought Ezekiel was great. And just the violent bro code, in a sense, in this film as well, that was carried through the character Chuck Hall. I said this in part 1 of this analysis series. I liked that the film informed us that Chuck Hall still became a victim of the monster. So not only did he help the monster, win his case despite knowing his crimes, Chuck's exceptionalism set him up to experience the exact same violence as women in the end. He got it just as bad as Ruby because he got his tongue cut out. So he couldn't even talk anymore. And what do lawyers do? They talk. All these characters did a wonderful job portraying just everything I said they represented in this regard. And kudos to all of the wonderful actors who played them. So moving on to Angie, I believe she's our last one. Yes. So Angie was a wonderful character. I loved her. Beautifully played by Janelle Monáe. She looked fantastic. I love the way that they presented this character. Angie is like my top 3 favorite characters of this film just because of what she represented and how they made her look. She represented survival and that toxic femininity. And she also represented this strange instability beneath glamour.
Their mother, Angie, is doing exactly what she's always done. Wiping and dusting and polishing and scrubbing every inch of their very nice house exactly the way he likes it.
Her presentation was everything in this film. Mwah, chef's kiss to wardrobe, hair, and makeup. They did a wonderful job of intertwining the beauty and danger that is Angie's life just within her introduction monologue. And I also caught that she refers to herself in the third person. She says, Angie did this and Angie got that, all the while peeing in a water bottle to avoid danger. And in most cases with domestic violence relationships, the abuser can be very particular about how people navigate within their home. So abusers use incompetence often as an excuse to harm their victim. I thought that was beautifully implied of how Angie is a victim as well of this, but she's a different type of victim. It's not seen until she says something. She's confiding in us, the audience, kind of like her diary, as far as the abuse she's put up with for so long and how she finally has mustered up the strength and the funds to collect in order to get out and get away from him, even if that means she has to leave her children. She was a great reflection of how society can be about judging a woman who is a victim of domestic violence as if it's so easy to leave these type of men when it's really not. Because I remember when Angie said to Racine and Anaya regarding their mother, oh, she should have left. She should have left. Like, see, I'm leaving. And Janelle Monáe did a wonderful job embodying Angie, aka the new wife. Her story was very intentional and placed so intentional as well. So I really appreciated this character, and I'm glad that she was written into this adventure. So here are just my final thoughts on just these characters and this film overall. No one is like a random character. They all serve a purpose, and I love that because that's one thing, that's one of my pet peeves in films and movies is just these random characters just to have. In this case, Is God Is did a wonderful job of just operating these characters through emotional archetypes and showing us just how realistic and complex real life people can be when it comes to circumstances like this. Is God Is, everyone becomes a symbol of what survives after violence. Beautiful film overall, beautifully written, beautifully directed, wonderful cast, deeply developed and rich characters. I loved everyone in this film. I love this film overall. Please go see Is God Is. It is starting to leave theaters. By the time this episode comes out, I hope that there's still some showings of it. Hopefully it reaches streaming. I don't know where this film is going to go. I hope it does get on a streaming app, but we shall see. But in the meantime, before it does do all that, I hope you guys are able to catch it. All right, y'all, that's enough yapping for today. Thank you so much for tuning into part 2 of my film analysis of Is God Is. I really appreciate your support. It's more than you know. Talk to me up in the comments, y'all. Don't be scared. I want to hear your thoughts if you've seen this movie. Do you plan to see it? What are y'all thinking about this movie? What's your interpretation of it? I want to hear your thoughts. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please give me a thumbs up and be sure you subscribe so you can become part of the Creative Hive. That is all for today. This is the work. This is the motion. Let's create.